welcome to Night Times with Josh. This is different. Ooh, I wonder if those little glitch artifacts go into the video. I may or may not have messed up one of the ports on this laptop. Um, so today I wanted to talk about the little man who lives inside my phone and delivers my texts for me. So I mentioned this once in a video already. So this is the main phone that I use. It's called the Pine Phone Pro, made by a company I believe they're just called Pine 64. I don't know why. But it's one of the few phones that you can get that's not iPhone or Android based. And so I really want to play with it and check it out. And when you get it, well, it'll usually come pre-installed with something, but for the most part, you are on your own with figuring out what you want to put on this. So there's a few different options. I'll put them there hopefully. And all of them have their pluses and minuses. There's not one operating system that's going to meet all of your needs. It's just kind of where the software's at this point. You're always sacrificing something. Right now, I kind of have a nice setup where texting works, phone calls work, camera works for the most part. But the battery, you can't tell how much battery's in it. So that'll give you a little example of some of the trade-offs. Sure. But the operating system that you install is it's the host operating system. It's called the host operating system. There's a second operating system, and that is the operating system that gets installed on the modem. It's independent. It comes pre-installed with a commercial software because it has to. It's a legal requirement in certain jurisdictions. But there's a open source version that you can install called the modem distro. You can't you can't accuse free software people of not being practical in their names. And it offers a lot of cool functions. So for the most part, it's mostly open. I think they still had to use some like binary stuff from the commercial package. But so for the most part, you kind of have this little operating system that kind of lives separately from the host operating system. And it does some, like one of my favorite things is it has an SMS interface into this operating system. Like it's hard to get access to it. It's complicated. But there's an SMS interface, and so I can basically like text my phone, and I can ask it for things like uptime, load average. If I've changed any configuration, I can ask it to reboot the modem on the spot, right? And that all happens. I'm sure I'll put up a little thing, and you'll see that like when it reboots, you'll see the 4G bars, they go away. So that's kind of neat. So it's not a phone for everyone. It's not particularly easy to use. It's a bit like if you've ever owned like an old car, and you've got to remember that you got to open the door just so, or you got to push some wires just so to get everything to start. It's a bit like that. But it was an interesting learning experience, mostly because of the modem and learning that it's separate from the host operating system. So the host operating system is basically every time you're clicking buttons on your phone, every time you're scrolling and you're swiping, that's the host operating system. The modem operating system, you don't really ever interact with directly, and for the most part, they try to keep that from you knowing too much about it. So it'd be hmm, hmm. Well, let's just say that it was a good learning experience because that's not just how this phone works. It's not just that this phone has a separate operating system for the modem. All phones do. Okay, and that gives you nice features. Like that's why you probably noticed if you turn your phone off, when you turn it on, you've got your missed calls, you've got your text messages, everything is immediately available. You didn't have to wait for anything. That's because all this stuff is happening when your phone is off. If so a lot of people, I remember hearing someone say once, they're like, oh yeah, so sometimes I really feel like going off grid, and so what I do is I turn off my phone, get in my truck and drive into the woods. And I said to him, I said, well, your phone's not really off, like it's still on. And he had no idea. Most people would not. So the interesting thing about with this is with playing with this, because I have more control over this one on this phone, you can kind of put whatever you want. You can collect all kinds of little pieces of information. You can see what cell phone towers it's connecting to. It has GPS, so I can get my location. It can continually collect that data. I can store it all in a file. I can grab it later if I want to. But it's interesting. If I can do it. I can see other things that are nearby, other devices that are wireless, or if they have Bluetooth. I can see those, and I can collect information on those. And if I wanted to, I could just have that sent somewhere. So that's interesting. Keep in mind that all phones work this way. Your phone works this way. It's very easy to collect this data and send it somewhere all the time. But if you don't want it to, it's easy. Just you hit the kill switch to turn it off, or if your phone doesn't have one of those, you just take out the battery, and that's all you got to do. So there's a separate little man that may live inside your phone, or to maybe put it a little bit more accurately, there are there's some companies that want you to believe that there's a little man who lives inside your phone, who will talk to you and do therapy for you, or be your significant other, or give you recipes, or generate cat pictures. But that little man doesn't live inside your phone. He lives in a gigantic data center somewhere, probably in a small town where the residents are now paying more money for electricity and water. And I wanted to try to explain it because a lot of people kind of get caught up in how magical this little man is. Because make no mistake, it's very powerful, interesting stuff. Okay, but here's how it works. Years ago, if someone asked me, could I have a little man on my phone that acts like it's talking to me, I would say, no, your phone is not powerful enough for that. And I would have said, well, what if I really, really, really want this? I really want a little man on my phone talking to me. Then I would say, well, it's possible, but you'd have to build like a huge data center to do it, probably multiple data centers. And the amount of electricity and resources consumed would cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month to have this little man in your phone. Make it appear as though there's a little man in your phone. And so just, I would say that the price breakdown doesn't work. That would never happen. Nobody would ever, nobody would ever build thousands of data centers and subsidize the costs for you to have a little man in your phone, because that makes no sense. So here's how it works. Silicon Valley has always been trying to sell you compute. It used to just be, computer tower, laptop, tablets, phones, video game systems, and they just want to sell you compute. Now you kind of max out at video game systems. Like that's the most compute the average person is going to want or need in their home. For the most part, most of the stuff you want to do is can get by in very little compute power. So that got maxed out. They're looking for ways to sell you more compute. So that's when you probably heard about the cloud. I know we don't use the word so much anymore, but that's everything. Like that's why when you buy a new phone, your contacts are just kind of available magically. Your photos are just available magically. All of your apps are available magically. All your documents. And everybody was happy with that because they didn't really have to pay extra because the cost was more or less subsidized by them mining that data and selling it, especially your contacts. And there's another level to it too. We don't think too much about, but that's where your Netflix, your Disney Plus, your Spotify, that's all cloud shit. It's basically like you're renting space to be able to watch movies and shows on any of your devices, anywhere that you are. And that's the trade-off. And again, those costs are subsidized by sometimes you pay for it, but also they're selling your watching data. But again, that kind of maxes out at a certain point. There's only so many movies and TV shows that you can watch. And again, they just want to sell you compute. They're selling you compute. But yeah, that maxes out at some point. Like the most things you're going to do is watch a movie with that kind of compute remotely. So they've been trying to figure out for a handful of years now how to sell you more compute. So you might have heard of crypto, blockchain, NFTs. They didn't really pan out. They tried really hard, but it just didn't. There's not, all those technologies have interesting applications, but there's just not a lot for the average person to do with those. They take a lot of compute to do, but the average person just doesn't need it. And so there's that one Super Bowl ad with Matt Damon or whatever. And Larry David also, Matt, and they tried, it didn't work. They're trying to find more ways to sell you compute, and they finally figured it out with the little man in the phone. It takes an insane amount of compute to have the little man in your phone. An insane amount. Like, if your computer, your computer might be like a sedan or even an SUV. Your video game system might be like an SUV. Your PlayStation 5. The cloud stuff. Is more like like a city bus or something like that in terms of scale, or maybe like a dump truck, even a larger dump truck. the little man in your phone is like, if you ever see the fucking, like, whatever that thing is, like the Bagger 3588 or whatever all that thing's called. Yeah, I gotta see if I can find a picture of that thing. That's the scale, and even that's probably not doing it justice. So they figured out how to sell you a lot of compute. It's all subsidized right now, so it doesn't cost anything or much for now. But that's it. That's the name of the game. They don't call it little man in the phone. They might use words like AI. It, it's not. It's just compute. They're selling you compute, and yeah, keep that in mind when you're making that decision to use the little man in your phone in whatever form it may take. Yeah, that was a good time. I had a good time. Good night. So I left off an important part, I think, of the equation. 'Cause I think you could leave the last segment and say like, well, you know what? You could say, well, yeah, I do want to pay for that compute to make my life like a little bit easier in certain ways. And so there's kind of three main components. So a massive compute power, which I believe we talked about. It's a lot of GPU. Uh, Clever programming, and then there's a third component, and that is massive massive amounts of stolen data. That's the only way that it works. Like if you wanted to kind of like ask it like interesting legal questions about historic legal cases, you would have to feed in like a bunch of legal, you know, files. So that would be one thing, and a lot of those are public record. So that kind of makes sense. Like, if I was tasked with building the little man in the phone, that might have been like one source I would have thought of years ago. Um, maybe something like Wikipedia. Although even then, I would feel a little squeamish about it because that's something that people kind of contributed to voluntarily, not under the assumption that it was going to be used in this weird, massive project. To boil a lake away somewhere. Um, and I certainly wouldn't have thought it would be used for the things we're seeing today, um, especially in my field in software. Um, I would have thought that, while I understand that capitalism allows for this, that companies would have drawn an ethical line somewhere. And I guess what I mean by that is, like me and a lot of people like me have contributed over the years. We've learned things from other software engineers, developers, programmers. We've provided help to other people. It was not under the umbrella of capitalism. It was just helping out someone else who might be a professional engineer. They could just be a programmer hobbyist, and they could be anywhere in between. And it didn't really matter. That was more the spirit of things. And, so lots of posts on forums, lots of like web pages with code explaining how things work, and lots and lots and lots of open source software that's freely available for anybody to use. And that's just that. That's talking about a weird gray area, where that's not even getting into like they've literally stolen data from, movies and books and other media that are copyrighted. And I know that somebody still might hear this and say like, oh well, that's just how it works. If you were dumb enough to contribute that shit for free onto some like open platform, well then it's just fair use for somebody to use. And it would be a little bit like I don't know if depending on where you are, like around here, a lot of people are into those. I think they're just called like little library or little free libraries, and it'll just be like a little, kind of like a little dollhouse with a roof that somebody built out in front of their house by the sidewalk, with a door, and there'll be books inside of it, and you're free to just take a book, read it, and you don't really put it back. You can put it back in someone else's or whatever. But the goal is just to kind of have like, you've got these books that you're done reading, you don't need to read it again, and it probably doesn't make sense to sell them, because you'll get like a buck or two at best. And so it's a nice thing. It's neat to walk around town and peer in and see them. And I've grabbed a couple books and read them and put them back into other boxes somewhere. It's a neat human thing. So it would be a bit like if some entrepreneurial young man came along and said, oh, hey, well, there's all these books sitting around. Nobody's really using them. I don't see like a lot of people at these. So what if I created a service that indexed all of them, made it searchable, and I charge people money to get the book, and it could even kind of start, taking off, and it starts to make the more interesting books hard to come by. I think if what these companies were doing was brought into the real world and made known, I don't think a lot of people would be okay with it. The only reason it works is because a lot of this it's kept from the public. It's not discussed. And it's just straight up not cool. So I didn't have an end note for this, but it's just, whenever you want to use these services, keep that stuff in mind. Like that's part of it. So yeah. I guess do with that what you will. And I'll see you next time. Toodles.
Young Matthew, we could have built so many data centers, and the walls would have descended from mountains across the land and brought forth crystallines into our hands, oh our hands, oh our hands, our hands, oh our hands, oh our hands. Our hands, our hands, oh our hands, oh our hands, our hands, hands, oh our hands, oh hands, 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 hands.